إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا بعثه الله رحمة للعالمين نصلي عليه في الأولين وفي الآخرين وفي الملأ الأعلى يا رب العالمين أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل كما جاء في محكم التنزيل يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Brothers and sisters, we begin with praise and gratitude. We've all been blessed in ways that most people in the world have not been blessed. We living here in Charlotte, North Carolina, have great potential as believers, as a collective, to shine the light of Allah to the world. And we realize that this path that we're on requires some focus. It requires some dedication and devotion. And so we ask Him to facilitate us in our journey seeking His pleasure, that He would make that path to Him easy. And we realize that there is evil in this world surrounding us. It has infiltrated our hearts and our thoughts, and so we ask His protection and seek refuge in Him from the evil of the world. We bear witness that there is no deity and nothing worthy of worship except for God alone, and we bear witness that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, was His final prophet and messenger He sent to mankind, that we could all realize the Abrahamic covenant in its complete, perfect, preserved state. In this time of the year, we find ourselves as Muslims getting a little bit agitated. You know, the other day on Tuesday, my son comes to me, he's 10 years old. He says, Baba, all concerned, tomorrow is 9/11. I said, yeah, and so? He said, Baba, tomorrow at school we'll be talking about 9/11. I told him, you know, this is unfortunate because in my opinion, 18 years later, they shouldn't be talking to 10-year-olds about such things. I don't know if that's relevant to their knowledge and education. But I told him, you know, somebody has decided to put that as a curriculum because it's in almost every school. Every school is teaching this. It must be taught, and there must be videos, and there must be knowledge for the smallest grades, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. So we have to think as a Muslim community, who should we be contacting? How many Muslims do you know that are on the school board of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, or their local charter school, or whatever it may be? To have that voice. So I myself will be having a discussion with the teachers and the school about this curriculum, about things that are said. I told my children, I said, guys, just sit there and mind your business. If it is presented that somehow Islam, or the word Islam is being used as somehow responsible for 9/11, or words are used that give that indication, then you should raise your hand and say, I'm sorry, I cannot accept this way you're instructing us right now. This is false. Or if they keep emphasizing that the ones who did it were Muslim, because being Muslim had nothing to do with these events. It's like these words, Islamic terrorist, or Islamic extremist. You cannot define terrorist or extremist with the adjective Islamic, because Islam in and of itself, by scripture, Quran and Sunnah, is not terrorist and not extremist. So these words in and of themselves are what we call an oxymoron. They don't make sense. It's like the weak, wimpy bodybuilder. You just don't hear of that. That makes absolutely no sense to say it. The slow sprinter. Just nobody says that. Similarly is the moderate Muslim. Of course Muslims are moderate. Why do we have to use that word? It's like it's a qualifying word to make you feel like if you're just a Muslim in general, then you're probably not moderate, meaning you are tendency to be extreme. So we have to put the word moderate there to make people think that you're the good Muslim that fits in their idea of what it means to be a good Muslim. The truth is 9/11 commemorations, in my humble opinion, have very little to do with remembering the lives that are lost, which was a very sad and unfortunate, tragic day for many families as these 3,000 poor souls were killed. And as far as we know, dozens of those were Muslims that died in those buildings. Actually, what I see is that there are millions of Americans whose lives are lost to unfortunate causes, and policies of political nature lead to these lives being lost. But we don't have commemorations for all of those people every year. And that's not even unfair, it's unrealistic. You can't just have a commemoration for all of the lives that were lost, unfortunately, in some sort of event that was tragic. But they focus on this one. They focus and make it a very important thing to be remembered. We're being reminded, actually, that this was the greatest act of terror in the nation's history, which is true. The two main things, the themes I see coming out of 9/11 commemorations is Islamophobia and what we call virtue signaling of nationalistic pride. Virtue signaling is where you give messaging about how great or good something is in some sort of language and use some sort of themes. It's called virtue signaling. So the flag, being proud to be American on this day. You see? This is the nationalistic pride. They're using a tragic day in which many people's lives were lost to somehow use that as though that's the time in which we should develop our love for our country, not many other times and occasions. And we rarely address our country's many crimes against the people who've lived here and are still living here, and the crimes against the world in all of the wars and globalization and nation infiltration and so forth that has happened throughout the history of this country. So, they say, never forget. That's the phrase. A pastor was on social media, and you could tell that he was genuinely concerned. This is a liberal guy, very liberal guy, and he's very friendly with Muslims and has learned enough to know that our religion doesn't teach such things because he has decided to study for himself. So the pastor actually asked on social media, what do we mean when we keep saying never forget? He said that on 9/11. And so people danced around the subject. You know, most people wanted to say, you know, the lives of those that were lost, which is great. We should, you know, feel bad about lives that are lost. But I think the obvious for us Muslims is that never forget has been used by millions of people and whole political parties in the Republican Party to mean never forget when Islamic terrorism came and destroyed our country and those Muslims terrorized us and changed our way of life and made our traveling so difficult on all of us. That's what I see has been perpetuated, and the idea is that some radical Islamist Muslims, which these words don't even make sense in and of themselves, because of their understanding of religion, thought they should do this. Which actually, if you do study Al-Qaeda and the things that that terrorist organization said that they disliked about American policy, none of it was about, oh, we're out to get the world because they have different values than us. It was about supporting Israel, it was about supporting dictatorship regimes, and it was about setting up military bases all over the Muslim world. That was their concerns. It wasn't about their freedoms and all that. But that's the story we're told, that Islam is against our freedoms. So, brothers and sisters, we are living in a world that is entrenched in the battle of ideas. There are corporate and political interests that have profited and benefited greatly off of Islamophobia, and they were able to do that primarily of using 9/11 and then spreading a narrative in the masses. Islamophobia, the fear of Muslims, the religion of Islam, what it's going to do. And if we're paying attention closely, and we jump out of our hamster wheel of trying to pay our bills and do our work and entertain ourselves, here's what we will see. Pay close attention. we will see that in this battle of ideas since 9/11, well over 1 million Muslims have been murdered. And millions of other Muslims' lives have been absolutely ruined. And the main catalyst that enabled this was Islamophobia. And 9/11 was the beginning of that. Just think about it. What did they do in Myanmar? In the genocide? Those Muslims are terrorists. What are they doing in China right now? Those Muslims are terrorists. Bashar Assad, all those are terrorists. Egypt, terrorists. Saudi Arabia now, any sheikh disagrees with me, terrorists, Muslim Brotherhood. Islamophobia. Palestine. Zionists have been using this for a long time. Actually, this was what they were using even before 9/11. But since 9/11, everybody's using this. Turkey, whoever disagrees with me as the ruler, terrorist. That's the label they put on them. That their understanding of Islam is about ruining our society. Here at MCC, on more than one occasion, we've given sermons and talks to demonstrate what scholars across the world have been demonstrating for 18 years exhaustively, that obviously our religion does not teach murdering non-believers or having any ill will towards anybody who is not trying to attack you. But from what I've seen as a community, we really have to ask ourselves a serious question. If we're indeed believers, we're coming here as believers on Jummah for the reason of the Quran asking you to come to Jummah. That's why we're here. What actually are we actively doing to change the narrative about Islam and to change the public opinion about Muslims, especially living in the most influential, powerful country in the world? Are we really actually estimating what potential we have as a Muslim community in America in terms of changing the rhetoric and bringing back a sense of pride to Muslims worldwide and influencing policy worldwide? Without the Zionist presence in this country, Israel will not last or exist. And they would have never done that. They knew that. They very well cultivated that relationship from day one before 1948, long before that. We have to get our act together. We have to take things seriously, spiritually, from the Quran, for human beings, for our brothers and sisters in faith, for the sake of truth and justice. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ اسْتَجِيبُوا لِرَبِّكُمْ. Answer the call of your Lord, who is calling you to be a Muslim and to promote Islam. According to PBS Frontline, mainstream, they did some research and some polls. They said, while the data shows that Americans are vastly, strongly affirming religious freedom and tolerance, it also suggests that a widespread discomfort with Islam among all religions and the practice thereof, and a reluctance of accepting Muslims based on perceptions of their extremist attitudes, their sharia, their law of religion, and their building of mosques and growing as a community. I can tell you 100% sure that none of these thoughts or attitudes or concerns existed before 9/11. That was all cultivated as a result of 9/11. According to a survey by the Public Religion Research Institute, issued in conjunction with the Brookings Institute, two very well respected, established polling that are nonpartisan. They said 47% of Americans say they believe Muslim and American values are incompatible. But half of this country says your religion and the way you think about stuff, it doesn't fit here. Yeah, your coworker may be smiling at you, but 1 out of 2 of them have different feelings than their smile. And the question is, what are you doing to change that? This is the jihad that we are in right now. It's a battle of ideas. We are not in a battle of armies meeting each other in the field. The way it works now is whoever controls the narrative can make policies as they like and even ruin lives with those policies, and everybody will kind of stand by and watch and say, oh, well, that's, if those are all terrorists, then, what would we do about that, And in the Brookings Institute study, this will blow your mind, 40% of Democrats polled said that Islam and the American way of life are incompatible. 40% of Democrats. You see, it's a policy of the Democrat Party to be supporting minorities and all that. That doesn't mean that necessarily they love us. It's just they have to talk according to their policy. And I've come to know this in many churches and in many places I've visited and many conversations. You hear Islamophobia and people talk in a way that you know they have that. Of course, 63% of Republicans believe that our religion is incompatible. 1 in 3 Americans think Muslim Americans are more sympathetic to terrorists than any other American. 1 out of every 3 people think that we are supporting terrorists. 55% of Americans say they know people who had a negative view about Muslims because of 9/11. These are poll questions. 1/3 of Americans believe that Islam is teaching violence to non-Muslims as a general teaching. All nonsense, all lies. But why do they believe that? 2 reasons. 9/11, and then the campaign after that, and then our lazy weakness about being who we are supposed to be, with the greatest of speech. We are millions here. If we were truly integrated and known, some people ask me, say, what is this thing about American Muslims? You have to own that. It is very powerful to be that. To think or talk otherwise is self-harm and detrimental and foolish and ignorant and buying into exactly what they would love for you to talk and think like. It is so crucial we understand what's in front of us. Because what's going on in China, where there is already many facilities with 1 million plus Muslims, they are building similar buildings in India right now all over the country. You think it's going to stop there if we don't get our act together? The people living in the most powerful, influential country in the world, if we change people's mind here, they'll be like, hold on, stop that. Stop giving awards to this Modi guy. He's evil. But Modi's like, yeah, we got terrorists over here, man. Y'all know about that? Nearly 6 out of 10 Americans report they don't know a Muslim personally. 6 out of 10 people, I don't know a Muslim. 21% of the general public has a favorable view of Muslims. 21%. 1 out of 5 people think that our religion and our lifestyle is a good thing. If they knew Islam, and if Muslims were being Muslim, and proud of that with their head held high, that number would be 100%. Just because of the facts. But facts is not what's governing things. Because the people of truth are not promoting their truth. لا يأمرون بالمعروف. لتأمرن بالمعروف ولتنهون عن المنكر أو ليوشكن الله أن يبعث عليكم عقابا من عنده وتدعونه ولا يستجاب لكم. Prophet ﷺ said very clearly, describing our situation, you better promote what's right whenever you get the chance, and stand against evil and corruption whenever you get the chance, or Allah will punish you. And you will pray to Him, and you will see no response to your prayers. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. You say, what happened in Ramadan? Sheikhs in the haram and here and there and just praying. Why isn't he getting answered? Answer is in our hands. We can change this. So, when measuring favorability of those who know a Muslim, so they said, if you don't know a Muslim, 21% have a favorable view of Islam. Meaning those are the 21% of Americans who said, I'm going to study about Islam. I'm going to figure it out. And they found out that our religion is a beautiful thing. 21%. But if they knew a Muslim, that goes up 26% to 47%. And if they said that I have a good friend who's Muslim, it goes up to 60%. The key is in us integrating in this society. This us and them and those Americans and the Americans and us and where we came from and back home, you have moved here and made this home. Only. This is not a cultural discussion. This is a theological discussion. The prophets all were from their people, talking to them as my people, Ya qawmi. Even though they were disbelievers. Trust me, ideas have been planted in your head. Remove them with Quran and Sunnah and what we know from the prophetic truth. Don't buy into this nonsense clash of civilizations. Protect ourselves. The Muslim world has got all kind of messed up stuff in it. One brother came to me, he's like, my parents, they were always telling me, watch out for the Americans and don't be American and all this. And then the first time when I became old enough to recognize, he took me back home. And then I started looking at everybody over there and I was like, what's wrong with them? Are they the Americans? Well, those are the Muslims. Come on, man. Let's not lie to ourselves. Let's deal with things accordingly. Quran and Sunnah. It will solve our problem. So we're dealing with a tough situation. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. There is nobody better in speech. That, as the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ إِذَا رُؤَى ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ. The best among you is that if people saw them, they think about God. They have a spiritual feeling when they're around you because you're a spiritual person. You reflect religion, spirituality, revelation in your character and your words. It's not that you're preaching. You're not trying to convert people. You're just being a Muslim unapologetically with your head held high. Saying the truth, being the truth. When it's relevant, you will bring something from the Quran or the Hadith. Not beating people over the head with stuff they didn't ask to learn about. It should be. But many of us trying to slide under the radar. Not be known that we're Muslim. Well, if they think I'm Muslim. I went the other day meeting someone who I love and respect, and I saw him at the place. I said, Salaam alaikum. He said, he thought I'm meeting John publicly. They will not know. Well, I'm John who's Muslim and American, and there's no problem with that. And so, Imam al-Shafi'i, he was asked, one of the students said, we read a lot about the great status of those who are tested and tried and go through difficulty and calamity. And then we read about when Allah blesses people with firm establishment in the earth, respected for their faith. Which one is better? Imam Shafi'i said, you will never be established and respected as people of faith until you go through a lot of hardship. The question is, how do you deal with that hardship which will put you in a place of establishment, at tamkeen? And he said, we see through all the Prophet's stories. They went through humiliation, abuse, all kind of stuff. Prophet ﷺ, we saw this. But their hope and their knowledge of truth, it stayed firm. And they kept believing and knowing what's coming next. They kept sticking firmly to who they were and what they were called to. And the people that were with them, they became great and well established. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Don't be weak and humiliated and, I don't want anybody to know I'm Muslim. If I say I'm Muslim, what do they take my green card, man? I'll have to go back home. Just think about it, what you're talking about. And so, the Quran is telling us, if you are true believers, you will not be with your head down trying to slide by, not be known. You'll be very comfortable knowing Allah is with you. You're being patient, even though they are bringing a war against you. Comfortable in who you are and what you're about. Ready for the hereafter. So the Quran tells us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا لَقِيتُمْ فِئَةً فَاثْبُتُوا وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. If you find yourself faced with enemies working against you, stand firmly in who you are, defend the truth. Don't be scared to be Muslim and speak the truth about Islam. Be prepared with ayahs and hadith to clarify to someone who would bring some Islamophobic nonsense about what people have told them about our religion. If we do that, then this whole thing can be turned around. And I can tell you there's no other people on earth that are Muslim that can do this but the people living here. This is the place where it will come from. It has the power and the influence. All of the rest of them have been turned to corruption and authoritarian regimes that don't care about overall Islam. They care about overall power for themselves at the expense of Muslims and the value of being Muslim. So ask Allah to protect us and guide us. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi sahbihi ajma'in. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, شَرُّ مَا فِي الْإِنسَانِ شُحٌّ هَالِعٌ وَجُبْنٌ خَالِعٌ. He said, the worst thing you'll find in a person are two qualities. One of them is a stinginess, in which they're worried that they need to count their money and keep their stuff because then they might lose it. Or they're not so sure about the spiritual message of what will happen to wealth when you put it in the right place. And the other one is a cowardice, where you try to hide from others. And that's what we see our situation is. It's not so easy to change and have courage and be proud of Allah who has guided us, and to stand firm with our head held high, knowing that He is with us. That's not easy to do. But we saw in a person like Abdullah bin Mas'ud, who was seen as like a slave servant. Umayyah bin Khalaf, he worked for him as a shepherd. And he saw Muslims going through this and that, and he knew it was ignorance. So he told the companions that he said, guys, I'm going to go read Surah Al-Rahman in front of everybody. They'll know exactly what was going on. They were like, man, they might just attack you. And he was like, I don't care. They need to know this. He went out there with Surah Al-Rahman and they beat the tar out of him. His blood was all over his face. They didn't know where his eyes and his nose was. Then when they got him better, he said, tomorrow I'm going back and I'll recite it again. Where are you with this skinny slave, Abdullah bin Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu? Where do you stand with his stature and quality? The Prophet ﷺ taught us, every morning and every night, you should pray, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazan, wa min al-ajzi wal-kasl, wa min al-jubni wal-bukh, wa min ghalabat al-dayn wa qahr al-rijal. Every day the believer should be praying this with a present mind and an engaged heart, knowing who it is that will protect us. Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from this depression and anxiety and sadness. I seek refuge in you from weakness and laziness in my life and religion and priorities. وَمِنَ الْجُبْنِ وَالْبُخْلِ, from cowardice and greed, and from being overcome by the debts and the oppressive men. When you pray that sincerely, every morning and every night, like the Prophet ﷺ, like all the companions, then you will know that you have every reason to be positive, to be happy, to be comforted, to be courageous, to be generous, to be engaging, and to not fear anything but what will happen on the Day of Judgment, depending upon how we live. وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ. You are hoping and knowing what is prepared for you, what others do not know and are not preparing for that. They're in this world worried about this world. We are the inhabitants of heaven on our way back. Ya Allah, we ask you to awaken our hearts. We ask you to lift up our minds and hearts so that we may serve you and that we may shine your light. Ya Allah, we ask you to forgive us. We ask you to protect us from anxiety and depression and sadness and weakness and laziness and cowardice and greed. Ya Allah, protect us from the oppressors. Be with us. Don't be against us. Raise us up together and bring amongst us leaders from our young people who will stand up for truth and will not be cowards, who will speak with knowledge and wisdom and spread the mercy and compassion of your prophetic truth. Ya Allah, help us to change the opinion of the world that the devil has turned against us and bring it up to see that the truth of your message is compassion and mercy as you have defined yourself and your beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Allah, we ask you to guide us and make us among those who are guided, that you will be with us and be our guardian, supporter, and protect us and give us success in this life and in eternity. And we ask you to send your peace and blessings and mercy upon your final messenger Muhammad and all of those who follow him until the day of